Didn't we get that at IKEA? My name is Matthew Kroll.
And I think it's time you and I sat down and had a proper talk. My name is Shahir Dowd.
And this is the only podcast about movies, specifically the film Sentimental Value.
Do you have anything of sentimental value in
Nothing.
your periphery right now?
Oh, without turning my head?
Yeah. In your immediate frontal.
I would say, sure, okay, there's different sort of things. The first thing comes up is the Extra History Calendar, which is the first sort of physical history product that we've done that I'm actually
Edward R. Hopper
quite proud of. Yes, with art inspired by historical
Vlad
figures.
the Impaler?
Vlad the Impalers, and this thing is called Misanthropes. There's a bunch of other things. You can actually see Rasputin is the end is nigh. It's a sign on the left. He's in the street. I'm actually quite proud of that. And actually, if we want to go real sentimental value, there's also a map of a made up place named Barovia, which is the place of the 4-year Curse of Strahd D&D campaign my friends and I were in. That they framed for me very nicely when we finished. So that's probably a little more sentimental from a friendly perspective. What about you? In my apartment, in this office, is there anything of sentimental value?
Well, there's some books on the shelf. There's a copy of Stephen King's It on the shelf, which I have sentimental value for because I had to carry that thing around like a brick in my school bag when I was at school. So I probably that's the one thing I can think of. Of course, the podcasting equipment itself, that is of sentimental value.
These microphones, Shahir, I think at the very least, these microphones have been in the room with every record that we've ever done.
And you know how much spit they've probably absorbed?
Oh my God.
These things are soaking.
I've never changed the wind guards.
They still have COVID in them.
Yeah.
At some point.
Yeah. Oh, Jesus.
God, we're gross. We are gross, but we are also nostalgic for the past, which is why we are doing Joachim Trier's. Joachim Trier's?
Yeah, let's go with that.
Yeah, let's go with that. New film, which is, I guess, a follow-up. No, it's not a follow-up. Follow-up for us internally because we did The Worst Person in the World last year, which is the first film. The first of his films I've seen. I saw another one, Oslo, August 31st this year, which I was excited to talk about as well. Basically like a very, very, very sad version of Trainspotting. And I think this will be an interesting conversation. I wrote a lot of notes for this. I sat down, I was like, I want to try and get my notes, the things that I'm thinking about in regards to this film out on paper. And then I put them down on paper and I was like, I think I'm an idiot.
Really?
Well, because I had been circulating these thoughts in my head. And then I was like, okay, I think this is what I want to talk about. Normally, I just come in here and we wing it. I might write down like 1 or 2 lines.
I don't think we wing it. I think you do a decent amount of research for most of them.
I will think about things that I want to talk about. And if I'm confident about thinking about them, I won't really write notes. I'll just kind of have like a loose sense of it. But I have like a couple of pages of notes here of things. He's
showing me, audience, just so you know, he turned his laptop to me and I see a couple of pages of notes.
Yeah, of things I want to talk about. And I started writing them out like, because I wanted to try and articulate my feelings about the movie with some clarity. And I don't think I've gotten there. And the point where I was like, I'm an idiot was like that. Did you ever have that moment of like, you've been thinking about something for so long and it has fully formed itself within your head. And then when you actually go to articulate it by writing it down, it suddenly loses its magic. Like it loses its shape and it loses its like, oh, this was dumb.
I think it's because the way that we actually process information in our minds is in and of itself a method of storytelling things to ourselves.
We're making movies as well, so the movies are fully formed.
And we, in our brain, to take as much information in and store as much as we can, our brains take shortcuts. So then when you put the stuff out there, sometimes that connective tissue doesn't feel as connective.
Well, it's not necessarily the brain takes shortcut. I think for me, what I think is, the brain is an incredibly powerful visualizer, and it fully articulates these ideas with detail that you can kind of absorb and feel. And like my big thing is I listen to music and I imagine the movies that come along with that music, which is going to be an important detail as we get to the back end of this podcast. And then when I have to articulate it in a sort of non-visual auditory sensory way by writing it, it loses the immediacy, the magic of like, the fact is in my brain, it has become a blockbuster movie. It has become like fully realized. Yeah. And then on paper, it is merely but a shadow of what it could be.
Well, I mean, that's kind of what every piece of writing is. It's just determinative of how much writing you do to get those ideas out. And that sort of trains whatever mental muscle that is or how good we are at it. But no, I get what you're saying about like, having it and feeling like it's a fully formed thought in your mind, and then putting it out, even like written as best you can, and being like, this is not as baked as I thought it was. Perhaps I should have cooked longer.
Yeah, and we shall see how long I've spent in the oven as we get to the movie. But we have a few emails that we're going to get to for people who have written us, who've taken the time, who've made the effort. We appreciate you for writing us in at onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com. You take the first one?
I will. This is from Joe. Hi, Joe. Long time. Joe says, oh, there we go. Long time, no talk. I've been busy working on some films and writing my first feature. Recently, congratulations. Recently, I went down to the Austin Film Festival for the second time in as many years. It is the largest winter conference in the U.S. as far as I am aware, and the vibe is definitely like summer camp for writers. Ryan Johnson returned to the conference this year to give a few panels, which are always a treat, but he brought an extra special gift to all of us. That was the film Wake Up Dead Man.
You've seen this.
I have seen this. Yeah. I saw it with Ryan Johnson doing a Q&A afterward, which is very nice at the Museum of the Moving Image.
Right there.
Continuing Joe's email. There's plenty of things I can't say right now, and feel free to ask more if you wish once the embargo drops or you've seen it, but I did want to share with you the experience of going. I couldn't ask for a better audience to watch this film with. Everyone was gasping and laughing at all the right points, and Ryan got a standing ovation when he came out for the Q&A afterwards. If you can see it in theaters, I highly recommend it. The performances were top-notch, especially Josh O'Connor. Absolutely phenomenal. The lighting was also a particularly standout element of this film, which is something I don't think I get to say too often. It's really well done here. The only other thing I'm allowed to currently say is that Ryan recounted to all of us after the movie that once he named the previous film Glass Onion, he gave a sigh and said to himself, well, I guess they're all song titles now. And so here's a quick reference list for you. Knives Out by Radiohead, Glass Onion by the Beatles, Wake Up Dead Man by U2. Please feel free to ask any further questions, though I may not be able to answer them yet. Thank you, Joe.
The question I have, which I think is on everybody's mind.
Who's dead? Joe, who's dead?
What?
Who's dead? The dead man.
Oh, no. It's a U2 song. There's no dead man. It's just on your iPad.
Wait, who's the dead man in the movie?
It's on your iPhone right now.
Shit.
The question I wanted to ask everyone is what would you name the next Knives Out film now that you know that their song title? Is it going to be Stairway to Heaven? Is it going to be No Mercy by Pearl? Is it No Mercy by? No, it's Kanye who did No Mercy.
Yeah.
I was thinking of No Mercy is Pearl Jam's album.
Yes.
But Once was the song. Or Jeremy. What is your Use Your Illusion Knives Out mystery? What's your album?
Wow.
What's your song title?
Oh, geez. Let's see.
Last Dance with Mary Jane.
He's going all Tom Petty song. Dancing at the Zombie Zoo.
Ooh, I don't know that one.
That's Tom Petty song.
Oh, okay.
I think it's just called Zombie Zoo, but the lyric is Dancing at the Zombie Zoo. It's a very good song. No, I don't know, but I mean, listen, if that's a thing, and if he's going to keep making them, by golly, I'm down for it.
If the last one's got to be Paranoid Android, Knives Out Mystery.
When it's in space.
No, well, the Radiohead track. You opened with a Radiohead track.
I understand. What I'm saying is, if you're already going Paranoid Android,
androids don't have to be they
should be.
Terminators were on Earth.
Those aren't androids.
They're androids.
They're not androids.
They have living flesh over an endoskeletal system.
Endoskeleton. Yes.
Yeah. So that's an android.
I don't know.
They have autonomy. They think for themselves.
No, they're programmed. They don't think for themselves.
They make choices based on.
They can't be paranoid.
Interesting thought.
Anyway, we're going too far. Let's keep going.
All right. Anika, thanks again for that email, Joe. By the way, Joe, I think you sent us a video essay a while back, and I hope that, because I was looking back through your emails, and I hope that we actually talked about it and acknowledged it. If we haven't, I apologize. I watched it today. It was necessary for me to watch it, and you'll know what I mean when I say that.
I could have sworn we did before, but if not, we've done a lot of podcasts, Joe.
Yeah. But so again, thank you, Joe. Anika writes us in. As per usual, I've been meaning to email you folks for months, but life got too busy. Anyway, I really wanted to reach out since we both held up our ends of the Sing Sing Rebel Ridge bargain. If you don't remember, Anika said, you guys need to review Sing Sing, and if you do, I will watch Rebel Ridge. And we did.
Yay, the pact has been fulfilled.
First off, I want to say I loved your Sing Sing episode. Here are some thoughts I noted down while listening. First one, always the best one. I agree with Shahir.
What?
Coleman Domingo should have won Best Actor.
Oh, okay.
The process is the point. Yes. Also love the point that that wasn't the crime or their interactions with the guards, but focused on their full complex humanity. So again, we're talking about Sing Sing, which came out earlier the year before last. We did an episode about it. Anika continues, art is an empathy vehicle, so important. The ability to inhabit the shoes of others, less art interaction, less empathy. I agree. These are a series of bullet points basically going through our podcast episode. By
if you haven't listened to it, this is the short version.
Yeah, this is the TLDR. Also appreciate you folks naming that often for prisoners, the goal is not rehabilitation, even if we would like to think that it is. That's the way it's structured as such. Appreciated you how you spoke about the character of Mike. I'm not going to go into details about that one because it is a spoiler. Also appreciated the conversation around time loops of prisons. And you are so welcome for the recommendation. So glad you watched, folks. Secondly, I wanted to share that I really appreciated the Ripple Ridge as well. I looked back on the notes for them and they were brief because I was gripped by the movie, but here they are. The beginning of this movie tells me it's real. It'll be different. Now, wasn't this your movie of the decade, or was this your like?
It was. I think it was
your favorite movie of the year.
It was in the list of the favorite movies of the decade.
There you go. There are several other points here, but Anika continues. As you can see, I love me an anti-police movie. Thank you for the recommendation. Thanks again for all your great takes and recommendations. Know that I'm listening all year, even though I only emailed a few times. We are happy to take emails whenever they come. Matt, congratulations on your engagement.
Oh, thank you.
Lastly, I know you folks like to bring to know where people are listening. So this year, while covering TIFF for my very first time, I was on lunch break from film watching, listening to the pod while eating some lunch, living my writing dream.
Nice.
It was a nice moment, full circle moment for me, from listening to reviews to writing on my own. Thanks for the support when I was asking for tips as well. I really appreciate it. And just so you know, Anika wrote in asking for tips. And I was like, Anika, you've already made it to TIFF. I got nothing I can offer you. We got nothing.
We're moral support.
Yeah, we are here to listen when you have.
Yeah.
If you can.
We're here for lunch.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Please don't forget us once you've made it.
Yeah.
Thank you both. Hope you both have a great weekend. Beast in.
Thank you.
Again, everyone who writes us in, onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com. We appreciate all those. I'm sure if you got to see Sentimental Value, you have a lot to talk about. So if you do, please feel free to email us in. Or maybe you've caught one of our back episodes on the YouTube channels. Apparently, you were just telling me before, All the President's Men was a banger of an episode.
100 views, listens on YouTube for All the President's Men. Far more than some of the more recent films. I equate it honestly to, and you can go check this out for yourselves. It has the most, I think, YouTube thumbnail of all of our graphics. It's just two of our faces with Dustin Hoffman and
Robert
Redford. Wow, my brain is cooked today. Our faces in their hair.
Yeah.
But they're like big dumb YouTube faces. Not because we were making a YouTube thumbnail. I was doing the graphic like I always do. It just so happened to work out that way.
How dare you?
But yeah, please subscribe to us over on YouTube. Maybe some of the groundswell is from all you fine folks actually doing it, even if you listen on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or any of the audio mediums. Just subbing over there really does help. Just keeping those numbers going up, which they are. And we've been releasing one back episode a day, though my automation system failed, so those last 3 days have not. But basically, a classic in order episode of the only podcast about movies will be released on YouTube every day, except for Sundays when
it's the Lord's Day.
When the new podcast drops.
Okay.
That's how it's been going. So it's 6 oldies, then the freshie.
So, and we have 500 and something episodes, so this could really go on for a year.
It's going to go on for probably 2 years if we continue with this release schedule. And I have been slowly populating, Sheer, a playlist of the only podcast about movies in chronological order. Now, the issue with YouTube playlists is you can only have 500 episodes in them. So by the time we finish getting up to 500 done, I'll have to just name that playlist the first 500 episodes of the only podcast about movies.
There you go.
Whee!
All right. Cinema Value.
Done.
Can you tell us what Sentimental Value is about?
Absolutely not. But you know who can? The Internet Movie Database.
There you go.
And they say Sentimental Value is, quote, an intimate exploration of family, memories, and the reconciliatory power of art.
Reconciliatory.
No.
No. Reconciliary?
You're gonna have to have to reconcile with how I mispronounced that word.
It's like a conciliary.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting. That's what I'm getting at. It's really mob based. This whole movie has a real mob undertone. No, it doesn't. I just can't speak.
Okay, all right. It's late at night. You saw this movie head to head with Predator Badlands.
My Elle Fanning double feature, baby.
You were carrying Elle Fanning on your back, which makes sense if you've seen Predator Badlands.
I saw this one first. And then I saw Predator Badlands. And we recorded Predator Badlands first, and now we're talking about Sentimental Value.
So tell me how the experience was for you for this movie in particular.
So you know what's awesome?
Yeah.
So I saw this on a weekend at the Lincoln Square Theater, and I saw a 10 a.m. show of it.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes when you go to smaller shows at 10 a.m., even on a weekend, you're normally not, you're not a lot of people are there with you. And even though we were in, I think, Theater 5, which is the big one, the small one on the main floor, but in the back, the theater was nearly packed.
Oh, that's amazing.
And I was really happy to see it. To the point where people were like sitting next to me that I did not know. And there was I feel like up to like maybe the third-ish row had most of the seats filled.
Okay.
And that was really cool. This was a great movie. I got both of the best kinds of theatrical experiences through, in my opinion, Sentimental Value and Predator Badlands.
Okay.
Because Predator Badlands was a near full IMAX theater, and everyone was hooting and hollering and having a good time, and it was fun. And this movie, you had the emotional tension in the theater of what was going on, but you could hear a pin drop. Like everyone was dialed in. And I just really appreciate both ways of experiencing different kinds of movies, but in essentially the same place. And so it was my favorite kind of double feature day, not only because the topics were vastly different and the styles and the emotions and the vibes, but the same could be said about the rooms and the people that were experiencing both of them. It was really, really, really nice.
Okay.
So the experiencing this film was wonderful.
Okay. You told us what you thought about the movie.
Well, I was going to ask how your experience was.
But I asked you first.
Oh, you want to see you're talking about the film itself. That's fine.
I don't care about your experience going to the movies.
It is whatever. No, movie. I really enjoyed watching this. I knew nothing about it going in. I knew that it was by worst person in the world, Crafter fame. But that's pretty much it. I know I like Stellan Skarsgård and Elle Fanning, and I was good to go.
Okay.
The film itself, I feel like, does a really good job sort of lulling you into a state in which you are somewhat emotionally malleable, and then gets you on board with how do I put this? With people that you could have sides with, and you could feel like you are like one side of this is in the right, or you agree with the state of one person versus another. But it also makes you feel like you've sort of been invited into essentially the one of the main places of the film, the house, to not necessarily pass judgment, but sort of see how even flawed people have odd thought processes and reasons why. I'm having a hard time without sort of going into spoilery stuff about like exactly what I'm talking about. The movie does a really excellent job at making you forget you're watching a movie.
Okay.
I was totally enveloped by this. I feel like by the time we get out of the theater in the beginning of the film, which is a wonderful sequence with how do we pronounce her name, Sheer? We looked this up beforehand.
Renate Reinsve.
Yeah, Renate Reinsve. Nora playing performing in a theater, but like having what you think is either cold feet or having a panic attack and running back and forth and almost escaping and then escaping and all. It's riveting in a sort of microcosm story element, and it is completely telling for what is going to unfold later in Nora's life and the surrounding members of her family. And a few other folks. So I lost all track of time. I blinked. I felt like it was over, and I could have sat in that theater for like another hour or two if I didn't have to get to, of course, Predator Badlands. Yeah. What about you? How was your value sentimental?
It's interesting that you said that you felt like you weren't watching a movie, which is interesting because it's the exact opposite experience of me, which is that I felt I was watching a movie the whole time, and I have a sort of interesting, perhaps not interesting, thought process about this movie that has to do with, in part, the movie itself, and the other part, something that you said last week when I said I was watching Oslo August 31st, the other movie by Joachim Trier beforehand, because I wanted to get more versed on it. And I think you said something along the lines of these are two different exercises. One is immersing yourself in the body of work of a filmmaker, and the other is immersing yourself if we were to look at all the other Predator movies before the Predator movie, one is immersing itself in the continuity of the story. And the word that I kept thinking about was intertextuality. As I was watching this movie, that was my primary thought, was the way that this movie is operating in conversation with a lot of other movies, and then eventually, in fact, in conversation with itself in many ways as well.
What about the craft of filmmaking?
About the craft of filmmaking, there's a sort of fun story about how Elle Fanning actually came to this, which is reflected in the movie itself. There's an article in ID, I think, where it said Fanning admits she was desperate to work with Joachim Trier after seeing his last film, which is very similar to what happens in this movie when she meets Gustav Borg, played by Stellan Skarsgård. So I thought that the movie was really working in concert with itself and in conversation with a lot of the movies. And then as the movie kind of kept going and became this sort of like folded story of a filmmaker reconciling the trauma of what has happened to his family through the art that he is about to produce, as well as the daughters that he has left behind. In fact, they are primary characters more than the filmmaker himself. I actually found myself reflecting upon my life in interesting ways as well. Obviously unintentionally, because the filmmaker is not speaking to me, but it kind of started speaking towards my experience as a filmmaker as well. And that sort of relationship between how you navigate using someone's real story as material for your art to go forward. This is all suffice to say that Sentimental Value as a film didn't affect me in the same sort of spirit as The Worst Person in the World did, or even Oslo August 31st. Which were more directly emotionally resonant experiences for me. There's a lot of beautiful stuff in this movie. There's a lot. My wife and I went and saw it together, and she was like, wow, I'm really curious how you guys talk about this movie, because there's so much in this movie about what it means to be a woman and what it means to be like two sisters, the relationship between two sisters. She said, I felt that was so personal and so much so well written as a female experience. I'm really curious how you guys are going to respond to this movie. And, inevitably I started talking about intertextuality, and she was like, thank you, please, good night. So while I think, the first 10 minutes of this movie, as we're, hearing about this house and how this idea that the house is like this living witness to unspoken things that have gone on and through generations of this one particular family, I enamored by it. And like in all the way that Joachim Trier has kind of proved so far, a really deft writer and filmmaker as well, like really just puts these scenes together in a way that is just compelling and beautiful. Immaculate sense of timing and musicality to everything that he does. There's a great interview with him over at RogerEbert.com that was conducted by Isaac Feldberg, where he describes his work as polyphonic, like really embracing the world of like the auditory part of the film, and, like how he does needle drops and that sort of thing. But yes, the film didn't quite resonate for me on a purely emotional level. However, it has given me a lot to think about in the last week, particularly around this theme of intertextuality. Again, in the way that this film is in conversation with itself. It is about a filmmaker who is trying to make a film with a movie star who wants to be in this movie, who is now in this movie. There is sort of, in my mind, pointed references to things like, Bergman's film Wild Strawberries and Persona, about the sort of what happens when you age and have you achieved the life that you wanted to live in the case of Wild Strawberries. In the case of Persona, what happens when two actors or an actor and somebody else kind of meld themselves together to form this one personality, which kind of happens in this film as well, with Rachel Kemp, played by Elle Fanning, and Renette Rensve kind of like trying to embody the same person. This is also a sort of detail from Alfred Hitchcock's Vertigo as well.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, you kind of clocked that when
I get that. I didn't see it. I didn't see. It's funny. I saw most of this film, at least my experience of it, through Nora, the character of Nora's sort of eyes.
Yeah.
And while that does happen, that is a thing. I never like when you brought up Vertigo. I think that's when I went, whoa, because like
in Vertigo, the character is trying to embody somebody who's passed away and like carry on their traditions.
Yeah.
And in this film, Rachel Kim's character wants to be part of this film. And there's this conversation that Gustav has about like this film is ideally written for Nora, but she doesn't want to do it.
Yeah.
And there's this, it's not as like,
I guess I found, and I know, and don't get me wrong, I know that that Gustav and Rachel's journey of trying to make this film together is sort of like the B plot, and it's a lot of the movie.
Yeah.
It's funny. I loved those scenes. That wasn't the things that I like. I never really thought about it. That the level of intertextuality or like depth that you were describing, I don't doubt was there, but it's not something that hit me about that. Like I focused more on the other element of it being the father who basically was working the entire time and left his daughters and now is trying through that same work that took him away to somehow make amends, maybe ?
Which it is.
Yeah.
But
No, I know.
And within that, one of the things is he's trying to make the story about his grandmother.
Yeah.
Using,
but it's probably not about his grandma.
Yeah, in a part that he really wrote for his daughter that is now being embodied by somebody else and who he's trying to like push towards being essentially like his daughter. And she can kind of,
I guess the Rachel plot, while I like it a lot,
yeah,
did feel like the most separate part of this. It felt like an extension of sort of what his story was trying to do and almost like a representation of how his life has not brought him to exactly where he wants it to be. Like there's lots of people that want to work with him and make things and do whatever, but he has not gotten wherever he's going. And maybe he's running from the wrong things or going in the wrong direction. You know, it's all end of life art stuff. But I'm not disagreeing with you. I want to be very clear. It's just the element that you're describing is I would almost say like for me and my experience of it was a minor thing that I didn't like focus on it, which is fine. Another reason I like this movie. Like there's a lot of stuff in it,
and we watch movies very differently. Yeah. And I think I guess that's a point is that I was feeling like I was watching a movie in there's this incredible moment that happened in the Criterion Closet a few weeks ago. Not a few weeks ago, where Denzel Washington's kids go into the Criterion Closet, and it's John David Washington and his brother, Malcolm Washington. And they're both in the Criterion Closet, and Malcolm Washington pulls out, like, is a filmmaker, and he pulls out like Agnes Varda's box set, and he's like, you know, like it's really interesting how this movie is completely in conversation with other work that is going on in the same time in different countries, and cinema is really, you know, and you can even see this in Spike Lee's work, and you know, like these are movies that are actually in conversation with each other, and they're having this like moment, and then like they pop over to John David Washington, and he goes like, Jackie Chan, yo, and he pulls out like a Jackie Chan Blu-ray. He's like, yeah, but you know, you got to watch some Jackie Chan, and I think there's like this interesting thing, which is that you can watch a movie like this purely on like an emotional level. And I think it does work. I found myself just not quite at that point. And I want to watch it again to see if it hits me in that way. Because The Worst Person in the World, for example, has this moment where, you know, it happens right at the beginning where I was just completely enraptured by that movie, and I didn't think about anything else other than what I was watching in front of me. This movie in Sentimental Value had my brain wandering in lots of different places, and I wanted to articulate some of that. So I do like the movie. I think it is very, you know, again, an incredible demonstration of what Joachim Trier is so good at, and the thing that really did resonate with me on an emotional level was the house. Like really understanding the house as a character, as kind of traveling through. I just read in this other book. I read this book recently about a photographer who was talking about this river in the Sudan, I believe, and he talked about the river being like the arterial vein through this country. And I kind of had that in my brain as I was watching this movie, thinking about like the house being this like this generational connection between all the traumas that have happened to this family and all the suffering that has happened, and has witnessed it. And then what's beautiful in Nora's little monologue at the beginning is like, does the house have an opinion about this? Does like the house prefer it when it's empty, or does it prefer it when it's full? Does it like, you know, push people in one way or the other? And I thought that was like a really beautiful idea. in this movie.
Well, yeah, buildings. It's the thing that I gravitated towards specifically with that thing is that's the type of thing I think about a lot. I've lived in multiple apartments in the city. I lived honestly in my childhood home, which my parents still live in New Hampshire. I've lived in dorms in Massachusetts. And I always, when I'm in those places, and sometimes after I've left them, I wonder what's going on there, and not like in a real like
Tom Hanks home here
it was an H word
movie. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting, right? Because like you have a place. Actually, the place I was thinking about recently, and when I watched this movie, was specifically my grandparents' farm, which is no longer in the family. My grandmother's passed away. My grandfather is in an assisted living home now. They're at a farm in St. Johnsville, New York. Which is a little postage stamp of a town, like just with a bunch of like real small. Farms were hurting 20 years ago, so I can't imagine what they are like now. But it's like essentially this beautiful 200-year-old like farmhouse. It's old as hell with a giant white barn, and I'm like, I wonder if that thing is still even there. Right. And like when I was there and growing up, when I was younger, when I was like 12 or 13, and the barn actually, wow, I'm making a lot of connections. The barn is where I started really making of that place was where I started making my own movies. Yeah. And granted, they're like on VHS-C and they're a kid making it.
These weren't distributed?
Not yet. Hey, if anyone's interested in a distribution deal, you know how to get a hold of me. onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com. I'll send you Escape from the Barn, which was my Escape from New York homage.
Makes sense.
But like, there's like, I've sat and wondered, and this movie actually made me do it, like, that barn, for instance, that building has been used for so many things. It's a dairy farm. So obviously it was made 100 plus years ago to literally do a job and a task. What people and things could have happened in that like place, just like conversations. Was there an important moment in multiple people's lives? There's important moments in my life, and the people that if they're using it again for anything probably aren't thinking about that. So bringing this back to the house in the movie, I really enjoyed the questions like you just brought up, like, oh, does it prefer this? Does it prefer like, and while those are sort of esoteric and a bit whimsical questions, it's stuff that I've thought of a lot about places that I do have a sentimental value to. Like I've thought about this apartment we're in right now. The bathroom is
it's seen some
shit, no pun intended. No, but it is, everything else feels very sort of somewhat modern in this apartment. That bathroom is like a salmon pink color, salmon and white. Yeah. It is the pinkest bathroom I've ever been in.
Yeah.
And I think about like who designed that?
Yeah. When did it become salmon pink? It might have been like blue before that.
Yeah. I don't know. It's just stuff like that when you have a thing like specificities in a living space or a space you spend a lot of time in, that you like, you know what things you've added, but then how many things did someone else add when they were here that you don't even think about?
And in many ways, in relation to Robert Zemeckis' film, Robert Zemeckis' film here is really getting at that idea by like fixing the camera in one position and seeing a passage of time through a single space. And this film is also doing that, and it's got an interesting conversation happening within it because that house is being sold at some point. It is refurbished by the end of it. We're getting into spoilers now, to become an IKEA sort of based poster child for like modernity, like a new modern home where all the cracks that have appeared over time have just been pasted over and all remnants of history are all gone from it. And then the house gets recreated into a film set by the end of the movie as well. And, the sort of reliving of trauma gets then redone through art. By the conclusion of the movie,
we'll get to the end when we get to the end. I have complex thoughts about the end, I think.
Okay, but you see what I'm saying? Like that house goes on a journey through this film and becomes replicated through art in this movie as well.
Sure.
So I kind of love that. And then there's a little bit of a sort of tidbit here that's really fascinating, which is that two things. One is that I mentioned I watched Oslo August 31st, the other Joachim Trier film, which has Anderson Daniel Lees as the lead, who was the other actor in this film who she's having an affair with, who slaps her at the beginning of the movie.
Yep. By request.
And The interesting thing is without giving away too many spoilers for Oslo, August 31st, there's a really critical, pivotal scene that happens in that movie, which happens to happen in that house. They went back to, the filming, and they were like, oh, it would be really great to make this movie in a space like that. And they went back and found that the house was still standing even after it had been used in that movie and was still there. And so Joachim Trier gets to revisit that house, which has an event that happens in it in the movie that is very similar to an event that happens in this movie that is navigated through particularly well. The other sort of interesting, fascinating detail, and I guess this sort of gets into, I tried to break down intertextuality into sort of three categories in terms of how we converse about this film. First is, like the character's internal intertextuality. This movie where the one generation is trying to navigate the trauma of a previous generation through art, and another generation is also navigating the trauma that has been inflicted by that person in their absence because of their art. There's a fascinating detail here, which is that one of the two daughters works at the National Theatre in Norway, and the other works at the National Archive. The one is, how do we preserve and remember our history? And the other is, how do we talk about it moving forward into the future? There is a generational trauma that is based here on World War II, where Gustav's mother was abducted or put in prison for a period of years, which he doesn't talk about, but is quite clearly the trauma that is being worked through in several generations. So the characters are kind of working through themselves. And then there's also Rachel Kemp coming into the film trying to play that part. So there's this sort of like internal intertextuality within the film. And as we described, the film then bifurcates as the house gets split into entirely remodeled and rebuilt.
And the thing that I really did like about this, the way that a lot of that, what you just said, is structured, is Rachel Kemp, let's even start there, goes in and thinks this film is about the Gustav's mother. Mm. And he keeps saying it's not. Yeah. And everyone's like, all right, Gustav, come on. Yeah. But and spoilers now at this point, but it isn't about that. It's about his daughter. And the rhyming, the pendulum of sort of trauma and history in a family, especially when you learn that Nora at a certain point had a suicide attempt, and Gustav's mother killed herself. There's a whole link of, you start recontextualizing why characters made choices throughout the entire thing, and how the interesting ways of between Gustav and his two daughters, how they all are, Nora and Gustav are artists, and Agnes is essentially an archivist. And I like how they paint, there's a line I believe that Nora says is like, how did you, I forget what it is, but it's like, how did our childhood not mess you up? Yeah, how did our childhood not mess you up?
And what's the beautiful response there? Because I had you. Because not everyone who went through this would have had you.
Yeah.
Like that to me was the line that my wife was really thinking about when she said, this is a real story. Sisters.
Yeah. Well, it's about, it is about sisters, of course. It's about family. It's about how I feel like it's about how you can have very righteous and deserved ill will towards someone, and that very well may be the case, but also that someone is a person who did get there a certain way, and you might not know exactly everything that's going on with that person. Whether or not you choose to forgive a person or whatever, that's neither here nor there. But the thing I really liked about this movie is, like, Gustav in many ways in a simpler film could have been the bad guy. Mm-hmm. He's not the bad guy. He's a guy who did bad things. But also, like, every character in this feels flawed and real and kind and human. Like, it all feels so real that I really enjoy. I think I've said this a couple times this year. I really enjoy a movie where there is no villain. I think that's much more interesting. It's people. It's not a villain. A true villain arc can sometimes, not all the time, be simple. And this movie is not interested in the simplicities of these situations. It is interested in the intricacies of these situations. And I really appreciated sort of getting to go on that ride. Because it's funny, like we as the audience, right, can look at Gustav and be like, oh, what like sort of a charming roguish character, right? But like then you see what his absence did to his daughters and you're like, oh shit. So like you look at it as like, you can look at it from Nora's eyes and you're like, fuck that guy. But then you can pull out back and sort of see, again, whether you agree with it or not, the sort of whys of what he does. I don't know. I like layers of things like that. And I felt like this movie really let you glom on, dip in, dip out to a whole bunch of different, essentially depths of people, you know?
Yeah, there's a thing about Gustav that I think is fascinating, which is that he is an absent father, but he is also, and there's a sort of one road that this movie is kind of leading you down is the surrogate daughter that Rachel Kemp will become in this movie, because he pays attention to her in a way that he does not pay attention to his own daughters. His own daughter is like, why weren't you here? And he's like, well, you know, life goes on. But he is like focusing on Rachel in a way that is like recreating his daughter.
Well, it's not recreating his daughter because he wasn't there for his daughter.
Right. But he is.
But like he has nothing to recreate because he wasn't there for.
So you're saying he doesn't know anything about his daughter?
That's kind of the whole thing.
But the interesting idea here is that he does know things about his daughter, and he does know how his daughter is feeling as they identify through the script, like that they read at the end of the film, right? Like they actually sit there and they go,
oh, the way that the sister says it's about you, and like yeah. So it's funny. This is where I as a story and a structure,
yeah,
I like it a lot.
Yeah,
it's a little weird to me that. And it kind of lets Gustav off the hook a little bit, in a sense of, oh, he did actually know and do all this stuff, and that's supposed to be seen like a good thing, but he knew all that stuff and still chose to not be a father, and that to me made me dislike him a bit more.
Okay.
Like it's not like it's one thing. And everyone's moral distinctions can vary. I'm not saying my call is the right one by any means, but like I've said many times in this show, what's the worst thing? Someone who does a bad thing and doesn't think about it, or someone who does a bad thing who knows full well they're doing a bad thing? And I undulate back and forth between what's the worst thing, because at least in one of those cases, someone's thinking about you. This character seemed to get to do both, and that rubs me the wrong way. Like,
because a second ago you kind of said that you liked that there was like a moral complexity to him.
I do like that there's a moral complexity to him. I like that as a viewer you can view it and be like, ah, yes, but also when it started to, the end of the movie doesn't land for me. I think I'll sort of go there, because every character goes on this intricate, complex, thorough journey through a multitude of complex familial emotional situations. And then by the end, and I'll tell you the one way it kind of does spin and work for me too. And then at the end, the dad, Gustav, kind of gets what he wants, but not in exactly the way that he wanted it. And it just sort of ends with them like trying to do this thing, which is nice. But the thing that didn't connect with me is from a narrative and structural place where these characters come from, that Gustav was both super knowledgeable and attentive to who his daughter was, and also completely not there.
Mm-hmm. I don't think so. There's a different reading that I have of that, which is not that he is like completely knowledgeable of what his daughters are going through and what have you. It's just that he, through his work as a filmmaker, observes things in a way differently, and his work is where he expresses his emotionality.
But he wouldn't have that information because he wasn't there. He wouldn't have the information to base that off of. Like that but like lines you perfectly said, right? Was when like, this is about you. Like it's totally about you. How can it be that?
She says it's like he saw it even though he wasn't here.
Right. That pisses me off.
Pisses you off?
Yeah, because that's not like an earned thing. That's and again, now I'm sort of going it. The movie's not pissing me off. Well, maybe it is. Like like everything in this movie feels so real.
Yeah.
Except that.
So the way I read that is also, I'm, like I mentioned kind of the three layers of intertextuality that I was sort of interested in the sort of internal intertextuality of the film itself and like the works that it's referring to. You know, there's a film that Gustav made earlier on, which is the thing that Rachel Kemp responds to. It features his daughter. It is a Holocaust movie, I think, of some kind, or a World War II movie of some kind, where someone is abandoned. It actually, that final shot from that sequence looks absolutely striking. And I was like, this is usually a thing that happens in movies about movies, where the movie that's inside the movie tends to look kind of silly and inferior. And then in this one, that movie that's within that movie, you go, oh, wow, I think this guy might
That's
be
a good movie. Yeah.
I was like, I think this guy might be a genius.
Yeah.
And, they've
He
actually.
also walks you through the entire shot earlier in the film before they do the shot.
Do they?
Yeah.
Does he walk you through
He's
that?
walking Rachel through the house, and they do.
No. I'm thinking about the movie that he made.
Oh, so sorry. The movie he made with Agnes when she was a kid.
Yeah. Like when I watched that scene, I was like, I think this might be a work of genius. Like that sequence is kind of because, like they come in through a field into a train, and you realize that the field you're being watched through a train window. And then Agnes comes in through the window, and the train starts to move, and it leaves behind her brother. Yeah. And then we pause on it. And I was like, he might be a genius film. Like he might actually be a genius. And so there's that level of intertextuality where it's referring to works within it. As I mentioned before, there's this repeated motif of like the suicide, his mother's suicide, and that's, he does walk through that, and we eventually see how it happens, and we realize that there is a reflection of that in Nora's own life as well. And then I guess there was this third layer that I thought about a lot as I was watching, or kind of experienced as I was watching the movie, and it is the way, I don't think this is intentional, but it is like the way that the film then made me reflect upon my life and the way that things were kind of, I was thinking about myself. And it started happening at the very worst time. Like there was a moment where he hands his grandkids 2 DVDs. And here's the thing. Well, you and I have just had conversations about like how we watch movies with our kids, or, like how I'm like trying to introduce movies to my kids. And as soon as that wrapper opened, I knew what the movie was because I owned both those movies,
of course you did.
On DVD. I think I still have copies of them. And one is Irreversible and one is The Piano Teacher. These are 2 movies that I've spent an inordinate amount of time watching, not for pleasure, but because I think they're really
because you hate them so much.
Well, we actually taught Irreversible, where we offered our students the opportunity to watch Irreversible because it was playing in theaters. They could write an essay about Irreversible if they wanted to. We were very careful with Irreversible to be like, you do not have to watch this movie in order to pass this course.
Sure.
We really wanted to make that clear that this is not a movie that is required reading for this course. But anyway, when he handed those 2 movies, I was like, is this going to be me in 40 years time?
Yes.
Like doing this to it's the worst thing. But it was just this sort of funny thing that I instantly recognized those 2 movies. And it was like, it wasn't just like he gave his kids movies. It was like, it was those specific movies that I know very well. Then the second thing was this idea about the way in which we take and translate other people's stories into our own work. And I've done that a few times. And I've often thought about the repercussions of how that's worked. So I've made a film called Double Happy. It was funded by the New Zealand Film Commission. And it is about an event that happened when I was a kid, which involved a racially motivated attack with friends of mine. And I've often wondered about like, oh, what is, I tried to divorce it from reality as far as possible. So it's like, this isn't actually what happened. And it's like what Gustav says here. It's not really about this person. It's about like this bigger thing. But I think a lot about like what it must mean to have to be someone who knows me to know that I watch everything that we do and think about how I will translate it into a story. Mm-hmm. And I do that all the time. It's kind of how I live my life, is I think about like what moments can I pull to make it into a story. And like my wife and I, we made a film about how we got married. Mm-hmm. And it's weird that film kind of now is the story of how we got married. And we're both very happy with it. And but it's like we translated all the things that happened and it became that film. And that film is now the thing. So I thought a lot about like the way Gustav kind of makes an imprint on the world by his art. And that is how he navigates the world. And that's why for him, when Rachel comes into the story and she's going to give him the opportunity to make this film, and he's trying to maneuver it into becoming this story he knows very well would best be played by his daughter.
Yeah, who's
But
turned it down.
Yeah. But now he has to kind of like maneuver Rachel into this position, and he tries very hard. And he's also like, I'm also not in control of this now because Rachel is the one with the power. You know, she's bringing the money to this movie. This movie would not get financed if it wasn't for her being attached to it now.
Yeah, it's funny. I didn't really read much into that about it. Like, that is the truth of it.
Yeah.
That is how it is.
He talks very much about like he hasn't made a movie for 10 years, and even his cinematographer can't even walk properly.
Well, yeah. But he's not too thrilled about it.
And that's the whole Wild Strawberries. Am I too old for this?
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
But the thing I like specifically about the character of Rachel is she also is not a villain. She's just
she's not a villain. No, not at all.
She's just an actress who's psyched to work with a director she likes and trying her best to do a role she knows isn't meant for her. And then she makes the call of stepping aside, even though like because she knows that like it wouldn't be right, and that does come with losing funding for this movie, and she's super sad about it, and he understands it. Like, I like it that there is a genuine, like, Rachel could have been played as just like she gets mad at it and bails. Like, could be the whole same start of the movie, and then she gets mad at it and bails. They also like when they're working together, and you can kind of feel like he's not vibing with the performance. It's not that she's bad.
She's not bad.
She's just not it.
No, yeah. That's there's this sort of wonderful stillness that Nora delivers these. There's a sequence that she delivers before she's about to in the script that they're reading before she's about to commit suicide, and Rachel does, Elle Fanning's character does that sequence, and she plays it kind of like a movie. It kind of feels a little bit like a soap opera. It's very good. She delivers the line. Everyone hugs her. And she's thrilled with the way she's kind of delivered it, and it's right because the words are right. But it's only when Nora does it that we realize the sort of what's required of that scene in order to make it work. And Gustav knows this as well, is that it requires a pain like that Rachel can't quite articulate. And there's the sort of vertigo thing that I was talking about, where it's like the actress is they're trying to meld these two people into one, or they're trying to like gently maneuver Rachel into being her so that she dyes her hair at the end. At some point she kind of says, should I do this with an accent? And then she's trying to do the accent. And that was the moment where I was like, oh boy, this movie's really going badly right now. Cause I was like, the moment Rachel is trying to do like the Norwegian accent, I was like,
but like in earnest too, like she's doing it in earnest. You see her working on it.
She's working on it. But like, you can just see like, this is a train wreck waiting to happen. Yeah. Like you can just see what the reviews for this movie are going to be like. And actually it's great that Anika wrote us in about Rebel Ridge. I talked about when we did that film, there's this sort of this thing that you have to kind of like hope for, but not rely on, which is that sometimes a movie like finds itself into the world. And in the case of Rebel Ridge, we talked about the fact that John Boyega was originally cast in that movie. Like bailed on it at some point and the movie fell apart, and then, like was redone with the other actor whose name I'm forgetting now, but like it was a star making turn, obviously so good that I can't remember his name. But like where that movie was finding its way towards that actor. And who is the actor? So you've got it in front of you.
Yeah, I'm pulling him up. Aaron Pierre.
Aaron Pierre. Yeah. Like in my brain, it's kind of like The House. The movie is like
not the movie house,
but like, well, a little bit like the movie house. But the movie, like a movie in a way, is a living entity, and it is maneuvering its way towards the right way to exist. And sometimes it will work and won't work. Robert Zemeckis' here exists. But Aaron Pierre, like the thing with Rebel Ridge is like that movie kind of makes its way there. And so this was a real long setup to get to the end of the movie.
Dun, dun, dun.
And there's a thing that happened at the end of the movie that just broke my heart, because now because I had spent so much time thinking about like my role in this and like, my role as a filmmaker and thinking about like, how I'm reflecting upon the movie as well. And one of the things I just mentioned earlier was that I walk around listening to music, and I think about the movies that go with those songs or where they're going to play and what have you. And a few years ago, I wrote a film, which didn't come close to being made, but I was very proud of the script that I wrote. It was about a silly story, is about an electric car that becomes sentient and accidentally kidnaps the family's dog when it tries to cross country. And I like this film a lot. And I had this idea. It's not an original idea. Like they do this in Transformers, Bumblebee as well. But like the way the car communicates with everyone is through music.
Yeah.
And it picks specific songs for specific moments in order to like communicate exactly what it's thinking. And I have a screenplay that I wrote, Canuck Chase by Labi Sifra, which is the song that plays at the end of this movie. And I was just crestfallen when it happened because I was like, this song is so beautiful and it would make such a great moment in this other movie. The chances of me ever getting that song are next to zero.
But how dare they?
But the movie was kind of working on that level for me, where I was thinking about like the sort of way in which it is reflecting and turning upon, itself.
Yeah.
And I do think the ending was actually really beautiful. It is a difficult idea, but the house eventually gets, they sell the house, it becomes renovated, and it becomes the IKEA showroom, right? Like at the end of it, all of the nooks and crannies are all gone. The cracks in the house are all gone.
That awesome little wood stove you could spy on your psychologist mother in.
It's all gone. So it's all been washed. The entire history of this family has been washed away. And then they rebuild the house for a film set. And they are basically recreating this moment with this suicide through the end of it, which also, now I guess I can say it, is similar to a suicide that happens in Oslo, August 31st, in that house. And so,
there's a lot of layers.
There's a lot of layers. And then for me, on top of it, it is accompanied by this song that I've long since coveted as something I would like to use in a movie one day. But of course, he uses it much better than I would. And of course, he has got every not just opportunity, but it is his right to use that song legally.
He or his production company or producers paid for it.
And if Labi Sifra was like, if it to pick a movie to put his song to, it would not be mine. It would be that. And so I was like, and so all of this was like, there's a lot here, and I'm thinking about a lot of like the way this movie is like, in one of the old film theory ideas is mise en abîme, like a mirror reflecting upon itself. So I was thinking a lot about that, and I didn't enjoy it on an emotional level. I enjoyed it on an intellectual level. I enjoyed like the way the movie was actually operating. And I think it is telling a lot of story.
Yeah.
And it is bouncing around a lot.
I think I enjoyed it more on the emotional level. Again, you step back and you look at it, and I'm sure on a second viewing, it'll be interesting to see how both of our second viewings
kind of switch places.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Because I think we focus on the things, I don't want to say that are the most important, but maybe the most relevant to us at the time in a movie. And then that's sort of what it is. And I really latched on to essentially the concepts of what it means to forgive. I kept bouncing back and forth, and I still don't know how I feel. And this is from a character perspective, not necessarily like, I think the movie is made exquisitely. And I think to have this be questioned in my head and still have me love this movie so much and be a movie I would unequivocally recommend to nearly anybody.
Yeah.
To have it still be the question of like, am I happy with where these characters ended? And I think where I land, whether I am happy for them trying to work through their things with art, or I feel that perhaps that there was still some undealt with issues that they're sort of breezing past. I think what I really like about it is at the end, I can question two characters that I enjoyed spending a few hours with and say like, I don't know if this is right for them, but God damn, it's super interesting to sort of see them trying.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I appreciate this movie on a lot of different levels. I'm looking forward to looking back at it in more of the way that you've discussed it, in the sense of the layers upon layers upon layers, and more of the film craft, because it's all there.
Yeah. And it is that, I think that was for me the challenge. Well, not the challenge. This is the way I watch movies. Is thinking about like this movie in conversation with so many other movies, and then in conversation with itself as well. And it's, there are movies like this that have that kind of repeated structure, or that are much more, I guess, more structurally aggressive. Like this movie is not aggressive there's
kind of floats around and just works.
Yeah. There's a gentleness about the way it actually works that it is not actually structurally rigorous.
Yeah.
But it is working on a lot of different levels in terms of like the stories. I mean, like least of which there's a documentation of the torture that Gustav's grandmother went through, and it is this unspoken truth. And there's an interesting detail here, which is that Joachim Trier's grandfather was a filmmaker who was imprisoned during World War II and who didn't really speak about that experience until Joachim actually went and found details of what happened to his torture. And that is, like itched its way into this film. And there's a beautiful moment when Gustav, when Rachel and Gustav are talking and they're like, well, why, I want to understand the moment that she chooses to make this decision. And Gustav is like, there's no real way to understand it. We must present it and allow the audience room to interpret it however they want. And in some cases, they will interpret it as being selfish because the child is there, which was Gustav. And in some ways, it'll be a respite because of what she's been through. And there's no right, there's no wrong. This is the reality of what it was, and it was messy. So I do think it's a beautiful movie. It is a really stunning movie. For me personally, I didn't quite, the true mark of greatness is when all of that stuff I'm talking about in terms of like, thinking about intertextuality and stuff gives way to an emotionally pure moment where I just, am there. And I wasn't quite there.
I wonder if that comes from, I mean, it could be anything, but I wonder if that comes from just sort of like the it's a piece of art describing how you like to engage with pieces of art. And it also inside of that art is describing the art that it is that you also like engaging with.
Yeah.
So like, how could you not fractal your way down more into that than ride the surface wave of it? Like again, and there's no wrong way to do it.
I want to make art like this.
Yeah.
And so when
it's fractals, baby.
And so when it is speaking to movies that I love and then using music that I love, within it as well. Like I watched the trailer today for the first time and it uses a song from Rush. Well, it's not from Rushmore. They used it
in Rushmore.
Yeah, they used it in Rushmore. The Faces, Ooh La La, and that's a song that was so formative for me because of that movie. And I was like, it's like this movie is. It feels like at times that the movie is speaking directly to me, the filmmaker.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
you see why that doesn't that might buck you from the emotional ride.
But I do think that moment that my wife described that we talked about here, where she says, how did our childhood not ruin you? And she says, because I had you, and they hold each other. And we realize, Nora, who has been this like emotionally turbulent character throughout, like that, the scene at the beginning where she like doesn't want to get on stage. It is anxiety ridden because you're like, okay, wait, you're trying to have sex right now? Whoa, sex or a slap? What is happening here?
It was really fun to sort of like have that be one of the starters.
And then she comes out and it's like, she delivers an incredible performance, and it's just like,
and we haven't even gotten into, and we don't really have the time to, but like, there's also the element of the son of
the grandson,
Agnes.
Yeah.
Who Gustav is trying to get in the movie the way he did Agnes in the movie. And it's just, there's so many little connections.
Yeah.
Anyway,
she's making movies with him as well.
Yeah. This is a deep and complex text. And I think that anyone would be rewarded by going to see it if you have not already.
Yeah. And I would be curious if, like whether the film worked for you emotionally, which I think it does for a lot of people. It is, being read that way. And then with for those interested in like the way the movie operates or, thinks about other texts around it, the intertextuality of it, whether that sort of resonates for you as well. I think there's been an interesting Nerd Writer, the video essayist, had this thing recently. No, it was actually a few years ago. We wrote about like weaponized intertextuality, this idea that like we are being forced to think of texts as one or conjoined with the other. And he specifically mentions like The Force Awakens, like referencing the Millennium Falcon and Han Solo and that sort of thing. Versus like something like this, which is a much more natural conversation between movies where they're obviously you can see the influences within them.
I think the difference for me anyway is, can the movie survive without you doing that or not? Like Force Awakens, like that example, like you need the other one for it to function. This one, it's a
no, you don't need to know about Vertigo or Persona.
But it's nice if you do.
Yeah. And I think that's actually what is the sort of mark of the sort of extraordinary filmmaking on display here.
Yeah. Well, this has been the only podcast about the film Sentimental Values. Shahir, when you are not buying fine stools from IKEA, where can folks find you?
You don't want to know what I do on those stools. You can find me not being able to assemble any furniture at my website at suvanova.com. That's SUVANOVA. Matt, when you are being stared at hard by your cat, asking you the question, why wasn't I the sentimental thing that you chose at the beginning of this? Where can people find you?
You can find me saying it's not time for dinner yet, Zoe, over at my website. Extra history and extra credits on the YouTube machines. Please check out. We have our Alexander the Great's Egypt series out there. I believe by the time this airs, the second episode might be out. Maybe. That is when Ptolemy literally steals Alexander's body. And the way he does it, holy shit. What a fucking weird ass giant sarcophagus heist. It's very, very Tom Cruise in Mission Impossible would be proud.
Okay.
Anyway, email us in onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com. What did you think of Sentimental Value? I keep wanting to say Sentimental Values. It is not. It is singular.
Okay. Just one value.
Yeah, one value. Let us know what you thought of the movie or any movies you've listened to us yammer on about. Next week, I feel like we have to, and I want to, bring you The Wicked Witch.
Oh, are we doing Wicked next week?
I would like to.
Yeah.
Let's shoot for the moon, and if we miss, we land amongst the streaming stars.
Speaking of intertextuality, I have no desire to revisit that.
Oh my God, I'm pumped. I don't know why I'm pumped.
Really?
I think I had such low expectations of Wicked, and then when it was good, I think I liked it a lot. Like I don't know. So
as far as intertextuality goes, the thing that Wicked will lead you to do is go back and listen to our Wicked episode from last year to hear our responses to that, to see how are we gonna fare in the second one. Will I do a complete 180?
Who knows?
And be like, this is the greatest movie franchise of all time.
I don't know. I hope. I just want two. I don't need it to be more than that. That can be done.
All right.
Anyway, we will talk at you next week.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.